Hey, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit now about motivational interviewing and kind of some of the key concepts in it. They're on their third edition of the book, Motivational Interviewing. I think some of you may have had sort of previous training in motivational interviewing if it was prior to 2013. There's been some updates in the concept. It basically is developed by Bill Miller in conjunction with his colleague Stephen Rolnick, and it came out of the addictions field. And so he kind of realized in his work with addiction clients that some of these sort of traditional concepts around addiction, it just didn't fit kind of what he was seeing with his clients. This idea of that, clients were in denial and that you had to break down their defenses. He just found that sort of a more Rogerian style of conversation it could bring clients to a place of wanting to make changes in their life. So now I've got a couple of definitions here, and I won't go through. I'll just go through one of them, but they kind of put together kind of a lay person's definition, one with a little more detail with a practitioner's definition, and I'll let you guys take a look at that. And then the third definition, which we'll take a bit more of a look at, is kind of the technical definition. Motivational interviewing is a collaborative, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change. It is designed to strengthen a person's motivation for commitment to a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change within an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. So collaborative. So it's we want our conversation to be collaborative. Now we've talked about that with kind of other models. We've talked about that with solution focused, and we've talked about that, and we'll talk about that with CBT. Each of these models has a little bit of a different sort of nuance in terms of their concept of collaboration. So in motivational interviewing, collaboration is about two equal partners sitting down together and having a conversation. And it puts a little bit more emphasis on the clinician is an expert when they come into the conversation, but so is the client. And so we have two experts. We have your expertise as a clinician. You've studied, you've researched, you've got yourself a degree. You know some things that are of value to the client. The client also is an expert. They're an expert in their own life on what things have worked for them, what things haven't worked for them, their own situation. And so we want to value that expertise and we want to build on that expertise. But it's a collaborative process between two experts. It's a goal-oriented style of communication. And so, as I mentioned earlier, motivational interviewing isn't shy about saying, we want to move the client towards positive change. Now, the goal needs to be, the client and the clinician need to be on the same page about that goal. But I think some sort of historical kind of social work approaches have been somewhat laissez-faire about what's important for the client, and that's all I'm going to pursue. And even though you may know that there's an issue with sort of an addiction issue, or say a person has diabetes and their diet, kind of just to sort of go along and kind of accept that, but we're going to just work on the goal of the client. And in motivational interviewing, we're saying it's okay to kind of have goals that are pretty obvious about kind of the health and well-being of the client. It pays particular attention to the language of change. So there's a lot more emphasis on language, certainly since the days when I graduated. And motivational interviewing puts a lot of emphasis here. And what they mean by this is that in their research, they were identifying that when people are going to make a change in their life, they talk differently than people who don't. And so when we talk, so if we're not going to make a change in our life, we talk a lot about the reasons why we are making the change. I'd like to quit smoking, but now's not a good time. I'm in the middle of my degree, and there's so much going on. As opposed to someone who is ready to make a change, they talk about, I just, I can't be spending all this money on smoking. It's coughing. I'm coughing all the time. I'm worried about my health. I think I really need to do something about this. And so the language of change is different for someone who's not ready to make the change versus somebody who's getting themselves ready to change. So, so in MI, we pay a lot of attention to the language of change. It is designed to strengthen personal motivation for commitment to a specific goal. So I probably should have underlined that, strengthen personal motivation. So what's the motivation of the person? I'm not here as a clinician to put out external motivation. I'm not here to threaten you, to tell you you have to do this, advise you of the consequences. If you don't, stop smoking, you're going to die sooner than most people, right? That's not my role. I'm here to strengthen your personal motivation. What is it? What motivates you to want to make this change? And so I want to strengthen that towards a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change. So what are their reasons for wanting to change? So I want to draw that out. I want to elicit that from the person and explore that and sort of get a good handle on their reasons for change. But I'm going to do that in an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. So I think most social workers like motivational interviewing because it's got this sort of a really kind of nice feel to it. I think it fits well with our values and our objectives with clients. Now, one of the key concepts in change with motivational interviewing is the notion of ambivalence. And it's rather than this sort of idea that you have either decided to make a change or decided not to make a change, that most of us are ambivalent about making changes. There's a part of us that goes, I'd like to, exercise more. I'd like to be more fit. But now's not really a good time. I'm really busy with other things. And, I hate going to the gym. And so we have this kind of ambivalence, these kind of two sides to change. And so when we're working with a client, we're working with this ambivalence. And so when clients come to us, they've got part of themselves that wants to make the change and part of themselves that doesn't want to make the change. Somebody posted this on a Facebook page of mine. My hobbies include eating and complaining that I'm getting fat. So I thought it was just sort of a nice sort of articulation of how, the two sides of ambivalence. I enjoy food, but I don't want to be gaining weight. And yet you can't have it both ways. Now the other concept that's key in motivational interviewing is the concept of the righting reflex. And this is more about the behavior and inclination of clinicians. So, you're studying social work, you're studying, how to help clients. You spend a lot of time and energy thinking about these things. And so one of the things that you're probably pretty good at is recognizing a problem and recognizing what a solution to that problem might be. And so our natural inclination is that when a client presents with a problem, is for us to come up with a solution. We want to fix it. And so Miller and Rolnick call this the righting reflex, this natural tendency of clinicians to want to fix things and to go towards the solution as soon as they can. The question here then is, what happens when the client's ambivalence, part of me wants to change, part of me doesn't want to change, meets the clinician that knows what the solution to the problem is? Right? Well, we get into a clash. So if a client isn't ready to make a change and they're kind of in this ambivalent kind of state, well, I'd like to exercise more, but now's not a good time. And so then the clinician says something, well, there's a good deal going on right now. What's the client's response going to be to your suggestion? Right? They're going to push back. The typical response is for the client to push back and start to argue the side of why they don't want to make change. So clinicians have this tendency to propose solutions, but the end result of that is to create a language discussion with a language or a discussion from the part of the client on why they can't make the change. And so the client talks about why they can't make the change, and so what effect does that have on the client? The clients tend to believe themselves. The more they talk about why they can't make a change, the more they focus on why they can't make a change, the less likely they are to make that change. And so the clinician, in their good intentions of putting forward a solution, inadvertently actually blocks the client from making the change. So the client starts talking about why they can't make the change rather than why they can. Now, if the client is looking for solutions, obviously, yes. Motivational interviewing is really designed for people that are in that sort of ambivalent phase of treatment. If a client comes to you and says, I want to, get fit, can you help me, right? Well, then you jump right into solutions. By all means, do that. Motivational is really designed for the client who's kind of, okay, I'm drinking maybe too much, but I don't think it's that big of a problem, but it's just too hard to quit, or right. So clients that are in that sort of ambivalent phase of change. Now, motivational interviewing also kind of looks at helping styles. And so, what's your style of helping people? And so one of the styles is to be directive, right? You know what the solutions are for people, you know what they should do. And so you become a director. You start telling people what they should do. You start prescribing solutions. You're kind of take charge of the situation and start getting directive. The flip of that is kind of a following style. This is the client's choice. I'm just going to follow their lead. I'm not going to, interfere with their free will and their choice. I am going to be empathetic and supportive. Now, the problem with these styles is the directing style. The person loses their autonomy. And for some people that may be okay, or in terms of finding a solution anyways, they may be looking for somebody to tell them what to do, but clinically that's probably not in the best interest of the person. Also, you kind of get this pushback from people who are overly directive. The other style of being a follower, following the client, is it's very supportive and it can feel really good for a client, but it doesn't necessarily lead to finding a solution. The client is just left to continue to engage in the problem area that they're in. And so, what motivational interviewing proposes is this concept of guiding. And so, I want to be. I'm not. Telling the client what they should do, but at the same time, I'm not so passive that I'm not providing some direction to the conversation and working the conversation towards something that's ultimately going to be helpful for the client. So motivational interviewing, kind of sets itself in that middle piece of being a guide. Okay, so we'll just kind of leave it there for now and continue on with the next one.